Hello, Year 6. Welcome to your induction day with King's Leadership Academy, Warrington. Welcome to your first maths lesson. My name is Miss Denton. I am so excited to meet you all. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be working on a worksheet. Now, hopefully you've all received it. If not, you can see it on my screen in front of you. What I'd like you to do, first of all, is can you put your name up at the top? Not just your first name, make sure you get your last name there too, so I know exactly who you are. Okay, and once you've managed to get your name up here at the top on that sheet, could you please type, without geometry, maths is pointless. That is your hypothesis. And in every single lesson that you do at King's Leadership Academy, you will get a hypothesis. That is for you to decide on whether it is true or false, and then explain to me why. So once we've completed our work, you'll be able to answer that hypothesis and tell me, is it true or is it false? Hopefully you'll get to learn that today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what you're going to be learning today before I move on. On my screen, on the left-hand side, you'll be able to see my success criteria. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by recalling those famous mathematicians who have shaped history. Those mathematicians who have inspired your future teachers. We're so excited to meet you. We're then going to understand how their findings have inspired the world around us and how they've influenced the maths that you're going to be learning about in high school. And finally, I'm going to be asking you to apply your knowledge to research your own famous mathematician. So for example, I've put a little one here, just so you can see what it's going to look like when you do it yourself. First of all, I've got my little mathematician. Can everybody see him? His name is Einstein. Hopefully you've all heard of Einstein before. Now, I'm happy for you to do a little drawing of your famous mathematician if you'd like to. If you'd like to just write their name, that's fine, but you do need to write their name somewhere on your sheet. So, fact number one that you find out about your famous mathematician, I'd love for it to be a maths link. So I've given you this one. Einstein was most famous as a scientist, but he came up with equations linked to calculus and geometry. We're going to talk a little bit more about calculus and geometry when we get on through the lesson. So fact number one has to be maths related. Fact number two and fact number three can be anything else. So fact number two, I've told you that Einstein was German. He moved to America before World War II and he was granted US citizenship. That means he could live there. Then fact number three, later on in life, Einstein became really famous. Reporters followed him everywhere and he got awards from lots of universities. So he was really, really famous. He did loads of work for science and for maths. So what we're going to do is we are going to start filling out this table. Now you are welcome to use the mathematicians that I talk about. If you want to find your own though, that is perfectly fine too. You'll have time at the end of the lesson to be able to do that. So we're going to start off. I'm going to tell you a bit of a story. Now my story starts way, way back. Back before your parents were born. Back before your grandparents were born. Way, way back. In 6th century BCE. I'm going to tell you this little story about a super cool guy. Now this cool dude you will learn so much about throughout your journey through high school. His name is Pythagoras of Samos. Now I've written it up on the screen. If you'd like to write that down, you are welcome to. So Pythagoras of Samos, he grew up in Samos. That's why he's Pythagoras of Samos. Okay, and he decided when he was old enough, he was going to go on a little journey. And he went to Egypt to learn about geometry and how they built those amazing pyramids that you can see in the picture. Now, whilst he was there, he learned lots and lots about geometry. Now, geometry is the study of shapes. That study of shapes really inspired Pythagoras, and he fell in love with it. And he decided that all of this wisdom that he'd learned shouldn't just be kept in Egypt, shouldn't just be kept to himself. And he wanted to share it, and he started to think about the fact that he could share his knowledge with the younger people of the world and teach them. But it wasn't just that he wanted to teach them about geometry and shapes. Oh no. Pythagoras was obsessed with shapes, so much so, Pythagoras believed that they were the reason for the perfection of the universe. He believed that geometry was the key to that perfection. He believed that it was the key to how the world is beautiful. But not just Earth. Oh no, the universe, the galaxies. He believed that geometry spread out for light years. And he decided he needed to share this. So he went to Magna Graecia. Now, Magna Graecia is in a place that we call Italy. So hopefully you can see that on my little map, Magna Graecia. That's where it is. That's where he decided to go to. He didn't decide to stay in Egypt. He went on a little journey again. Now, he went to Magna Graecia because he wanted to teach more people. He didn't want to just stay in Egypt. And whilst he was in Magna Graecia, he set up his own cult. Now, I'm using the word cult for a reason. It was specifically a cult. It wasn't just a group. It wasn't just a teaching. It wasn't a school. It was a cult. Now, these people followed Pythagoras' every word. They were obsessed with the guy. They were so obsessed, and he was so egotistical, that he named the cult Pythagoreans, and they called themselves the Pythagoreans. They named themselves after him. Now, these guys would spend their days and their evenings talking about the philosophies and talking about the geometries that Pythagoras loved. And they didn't stop talking about them. They would write some down, and that's why we've got the Pythagoras' theorem. Not necessarily that Pythagoras himself came up with it, but like I say, they were obsessed with the guy. So they named the theorem after him. So Pythagoras' theorem, which you will learn about in high school, is named after Pythagoras because of the Pythagoreans. Now these guys were nuts. They were crazy about maths. They were absolutely obsessed with geometry. However, there was one thing in maths they did not like, and that was irrational numbers. Now, irrational numbers are numbers with decimal places that go on forever, and they never ever end. So for example, if I said to you 1.3 recurring, so 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, and I never stopped saying 3, they hated that. That number does not exist to the Pythagoreans. And if they found any Pythagorean talking about it, they would do despicable things to that poor person. And it was because of that, because of the way that they ran their cult, that they were kicked out of Magna Graecia. The people there did not like them, and they sent them away. They chased them out. However, Pythagoras was so obsessed with the geometry and the perfection of the universe that unfortunately he didn't write down everything that they discussed, all these different things that they worked out and they found out. These years and years of their work, they did not write them down. Now, although we know quite a lot about the Pythagoreans and a lot more than we do about most secret cults, the fact that they didn't write down half of the information that we needed to know for this mathematician to be as famous as he is means we're missing out on so much information. However, may I introduce you to our new character, Euclid. Now this guy you will hear about a lot when you come to King's Leadership Academy. One of the classes is named after Euclid because he was so amazing. This is one awesome guy. Now, people don't really know a lot about Euclid. We don't know when he was born. We don't know when he died. And I mean, how powerful was this guy? We know he was super smart though. Now, this guy is famous for basically writing a book. But not just one book. Oh no. He wrote 13 books. Now, these books talk about maths in detail. Okay? They lasted for over 2,000 years with people not being able to even contend with them. They were like the Bible to a mathematician. In fact, at the time, they were the third most popular book compared to the Bible, with Bible being number one. Now, think how many Bibles there are that are sold. This was the third. So, this book was called The Elements. And like I say, it was amazing to mathematicians, to the world, in fact. People were obsessed with this book, well, these 13. But what was so special about this book was that it talked about every part of math. It went into detail about irrational numbers. It went into detail about algebra, about geometry. But it wasn't just that it talked about everything in maths. Oh no. It was the fact that he could go into detail about all of these different ideas that other mathematicians before him had come up with. And he added to them. He added his own knowledge. He stretched out that information. But not only that, he organized things magnificently. And I'm sure when you guys come to King's Leadership Academy, you will realize how organized certain teachers, me, are. This guy took it to a new level. His organization was impeccable. His organization was so good within this book that as you went through the book, it built on prior knowledge from that very book. Meaning that that very first chapter that talked about that key information, the key words, the key elements, that was able to build up for you to be able to then solve those problems that came on later, which meant that everything became a building block to answer those higher level questions that were in that book. All the problems that he went into detail and solved were based on the information that came before it. And for his time, that was magnificent. This guy was way ahead of his time. And that's why at King's Leadership Academy, it's one of the reasons that we have named one of our classes after him. He is one cool dude. However, there's always a however. He couldn't solve every problem. In fact, there is one problem, and I will let you guys research it, that even Euclid couldn't necessarily solve without going through everything else that he knew about maths. He had to go through every other detail about maths in order for him to solve that problem. And it's only to do with parallel lines. Those train track lines that you'll have heard about so much in primary school. But I'll let you guys research that. So like I say, Euclid was amazing. However, his research throughout time, throughout the panic and the wars, the fires and the famine, his research began to disappear. All that geometry that had spread across Europe that he'd embedded into society began to disappear. And only a small portion of Europe managed to keep hold of that, the Byzantine Empire. So you can see those countries in the background those orange countries, they managed to keep hold of this information. They kept it so sacred. They kept it locked away. But it wasn't them that brought it all back to society. It wasn't this empire that managed to bring Euclid's work back to the forefront and show it off to the world. In fact, it was somebody else that rose to power. It was during the Islamic Golden Age, when Islam rose to power, that they sent their soldiers all the way over to Constantinople, which is this little tiny black dot here, to write up and to make copies of all of this work. Now you can see this empire is slowly dwindling away from the orange that I showed you before. They sent them all the way over to Constantinople, and they said, you need to copy up these pieces of work. You need to get these philosophies written down. You need to write down what these mathematicians have said. And one of those pieces of work that was written up was Euclid's. They wrote up the elements. They made copies, and they brought it back. Now, one of those people that was over there, who was writing this up, who was doing this information, was a guy called Omar Khayyam. Now, this guy is pretty cool. Whilst writing this all up, he decided that these irrational numbers, these numbers that the Pythagoreans couldn't stand, that they would murder for, he decided, well, I'm going to say that you can put them on a number line. He decided that actually I can say that pi, an irrational number that you will learn about in high school, pi is greater than 3. It's lower than 3.2, but I can work out whereabouts roughly it would be on a number line, and he managed to fit that onto a number line. Now this was a problem that had confounded Euclid. This is something that even Euclid himself could not have solved. Because no matter how small you broke down that number line, Euclid could not be happy with the idea that you could not split it into such equal amounts that you could fit an irrational number on. Now remember, those irrational numbers, those numbers that go on forever. But Omar, calm, collected, he said, it's okay. Yes, I can. And he put those numbers onto a number line. Now, obviously, this was 700 years after Euclid. Euclid was no longer around, but it would have confounded Euclid. It would have completely confused him. But thankfully, thanks to Omar, we are now able to use that number, 3.1415926, that magical number that your mathematicians will be obsessed with. Your maths teachers will never stop talking about it. And that magical number is pi. I'm not going to tell you any more information. I'm going to let you guys do a bit of research yourself. So what I want you to do is, can you research? Do you know any other famous mathematicians that are out there? I want you to use the internet, use your devices, and find out more information about who inspired maths that we use today. Research and find out who are those mathematicians that when you go to high school, your maths teachers will be in love with. Who are the mathematicians that maybe your classes might be named after? Are there any mathematicians that maybe aren't from ancient times? Are there any modern day famous mathematicians? See how many mathematicians you can find, add them onto your Word document, and I'm sure that Miss will tell me how amazing you have been. I cannot wait to meet you guys, hopefully in September. Have a lovely summer, and hopefully I'll get to see you on your first day. Have a lovely time. Thank you so much for having a little listen to me. If you have any questions, if you ask your teachers, I'm sure they'll point you in the right direction of talking to me, and I'll be able to help you out. Thank you so much. Goodbye, Year 6.